The reason is I have a dual appointment right now. I work at the University of Nicosia and the Management Center in Innsbruck in Austria. And MCI has an exchange program with you for students, and I thought, hey, why only for students? And so I approached the vice president, and she headed me on to Rudy, and Rudy said, yeah, why don't you come over and teach that course on acculturation and leadership development. And so this is how I happened to come here. I put on my other hat then, and I spoke for the University of Nicosia, where I'm going back to the day after tomorrow. And we're also in the process of negotiating a student exchange agreement with them. And that should, and hopefully will also include staff exchanges. Yeah. In business speak, this would be operationalizing the concept.
It's so.
Yeah. I think this is a problematic way, of course, of applying cultural studies and acculturation. Right, but not everything is okay in cultural studies land, I think, because on the one hand, and especially in the US, and this was prior to Obama, cultural studies was very much under attack from traditional English departments, who thought, you know, what are they doing? You're taking students away from us, and you're not really adding to the dialogue, you're just confusing students. And also very much, even more so, under attack from the right, saying that this is all leftist socio-babble and don't give our students these things. The problem for cultural studies then is to say, are we a real discipline or not? And I think this is an issue that is still ongoing, and it has not really been solved yet. There's also a problem with cultural studies in that it comes from so many different fields. And wherever you go in a country, in countries, there will be applications of theories that mainly come from either the UK or from Germany, or then a combination thereof from the US. In the UK, cultural studies goes back to the Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Research, which I don't know if you know, but was closed a few years ago by the administration because they did not bring enough money. And they themselves were influenced by the Frankfurt School, by the studies that have been done by Adorno, by Kruse, and also by Horkheimer, and more recently by Habermas, not recently, in the 70s, 1980s, shows my age. So, echoing these Frankfurt School methodologies, it was Stuart Hall who formulated the definition of cultural studies not as a canonical discipline of inquiry, but rather as a Foucauldian discursive formation. And the discussions of what cultural studies actually are has always been part of cultural studies themselves, I think. And these are still continuing. And notice I refuse to use the singular when I speak about cultural studies. It still feels kind of weird when we're doing that, but I don't think there is a singular for them. I think that with the passing of time and cultural studies forming itself into a more solid body of knowledge and perhaps even having a distinct number of canonical texts that you're looking at, it becomes problematic because then it's losing some of its power and singulating itself in very many fields. And this is one of the big questions that has to be asked, and universities are asking that question, should we have a separate cultural studies department or not? I think there was an interesting point that was made by Paul Smith, one of the British people teaching in the US on cultural studies, when he was looking at cultural studies vis-a-vis natural sciences. This was going on around 2002, 2003. Smith claims an inherent interrelatedness between science and cultural studies, a few not shared by defenders of the two cultures theory, such as C.P. Snow. But Smith also claims that cultural studies have now reached an institutionalized status where the anything goes eclectic policy might do more harm than good. Just a quick quote from him from 2004. He says, among other things, it means that cultural studies has few grounds on which to reproduce itself in its students, graduate or undergraduate, and this is clearly a problem in the context of increasing institutionalization of the field. On the other hand, it is beginning to forge much more credible curricula. So in a way, cultural studies has become a victim of their own success. The question, what are cultural studies, is as big as ever. It has not really been answered. Now, this institutionalizing might seem like it's answering the question, but I think it's answering the question only from a content perspective. When looking at 3 recent publications in the field of cultural studies, it seems that globalization has certainly struck a chord. In their reader aptly titled Internationalizing Cultural Studies, Abbas et al. In 2005 show off this process, and Richard Johnson's Practicing Cultural Studies, Richard Johnson, of course, one of the inheritors of the Birmingham Cape, in his Practicing Cultural Studies carries many remarks and indeed chapters regarding the globality of it all in cultural studies. However, while such texts carry much international content, when it comes to the international teaching aspect of cultural studies, most of them fall silent. It seems many US-UK institutions are content with critically introducing the world as a semi-canonical element into the Anglo-American sphere, and then forget that these radical US-UK elements have actually begun infiltrating many foreign academic disciplines as well. But the question that I have then is, how are cultural studies to be taught globally? Are there many CSs or only one? How much localization is required? It would appear that international cultural studies continue to have theoretization as well as an application deficit. In the following, then, I would like to exemplify cases that suggest that it is high time to address any such problematic. It will also become clear that the international application is an integral part of cultural studies themselves. Now, I go on and say that there are, it's not like people have not really published on this. There are some texts that address what to do with cultural studies internationally. I'm not going to bore you with those, but they are very far and few in between, I'll tell you that. I will actually, and this is here, I will tell you a couple of things of some of the experiences I've had while I was teaching cultural studies. The theory part, I'd be happy to mail you the papers. During previous teaching engagements, I have taught one form or another of cultural studies in several countries, in language departments and cultural studies departments, and various universities and institutes of higher learning. And while I was occasionally briefed on institutional particularities, those would always rear their beautiful and ugly heads only when I would enter a classroom. Well, exit it, actually. It became clear to me that there are a host of issues to be contended with. I learned that when teaching cultural studies, not just the country mattered, but also the region, the institution, the program, the particular class, and its participating individuals. And I would claim that those are valuable lessons which require, and indeed later on, illicit theoretical questions and gains as well. But even before going into a particular course and text, there is another issue requiring attention. When teaching in a culture as a foreigner, I just learned the word, what is it? Dayuhan. Dayuhan, okay. Dayuhan, let's stress the second syllable. Okay. So when teaching cultural studies at the Dayuhan, as I mostly did, one is confronted with a paradox not encountered when the target culture and the teacher's culture are more homogeneous. This is a paradox well known from anthropology and an unwitting import from that discipline. James Clifford has described it as the problem of the simultaneity of oneself as a participant in and observer of a culture. In that double position, and quite literally involved in field work, one is challenged by the problematics of the foreign territories one is entangled in. This begins with one's own position and continues through the texts discussed. Clifford explains, even the best ethnographic texts, serious true fictions,